So, going back to LDOCE online, another one of your vocabulary words is this word exemplify. So I'll type it in here, very easy. And you just click return. And here it says the word here, it tells you how many syllables it is. It'll even tell you, if you know the IPA, right, where the stress of the word is. And this word, of course, is a verb. We can even see that from the actual text in our book. And it will tell you how you spell each of those forms, which is really nice because they're not always so easy. And right next to that, here we are with the word transitive. And so exemplify is a verb that's a transitive verb. Great. Well, what does that mean? Let's review that together. So just like there's two types of nouns, count and non-count, there are two main types of verbs, transitive and intransitive. A transitive verb means that for the grammar of the word to be correct, the verb needs a noun right after the verb. For example, I took the medicine. I is a noun, took is the verb, and the object, which is also a noun, is the medicine. In English, we never say I took. At minimum, we have to say I took it. But we never just say I took. This verb requires that there is a noun right after it for it to make sense to a native speaker. And so this is a grammar mistake, actually, if you don't have a direct object after the verb, which in this case would be medicine. The other type of verb is an intransitive verb. And that means for the grammar to be correct in the sentence, the verb cannot have a noun right after it. It can have a period, it could be the end of the sentence, it can have an adverb, or it can have a prepositional phrase, but it cannot have a noun right after the verb. A very popular, really good example of an intransitive verb is the verb sleep. So I gave you lots of examples here. One, I sleep often. That is sleep here is an intransitive verb, and this is an adverb, often, telling me how frequently you do something. I sleep on a bed. On a bed is a prepositional phrase. I sleep. It's always good to sleep. A very simple sentence, but it's grammatically correct. That's using a period mark. But we would never say, I sleep bed. And I bet all of you know that. You would never say that. But why wouldn't you say that? It's because sleep is an intransitive verb. It might be easy for these verbs, took or take and sleep, but actually for verbs that you've never seen before, verbs that you don't know how they work exactly, this can also be kind of a key to a native speaker as to whether you're really advanced in the English language or you're still learning. So this is something to really be aware of as we go through our vocabulary notebook and as you go through your semester. So let's go back to our handout here. We just went over line 1. Not all the lines will be that long of an explanation. So here, consequence, noun, countable, we mentioned. Next, we want to do the definition of the word from the context of the reading from LDOCE online. Now I want to point out and acknowledge that all of these words do have a very simple definition next to them. But what I'd like you to do is take what you know from the definition given and take what you know from reading the context of the article. And then when we go to LDOCE online, you want to choose the best option. Here, this one is quite simple because these are kind of fixed phrases. If you see consequence that way, and if it were that way in the reading, that's the choice we would have. But there's only one true definition of this word on this page. So we would just use this definition in our vocabulary notebooks. And I believe that's what I've done already. Yes, the dictionary definition from LDOCE. Something that happens as a result of a particular action or set of conditions. So here we are. The reading example or the reading definition is helpful, but this one has a little bit more, it's a little more specific, and you'll see as you do this more that the definitions given in the book are a little bit simplistic and don't give you as full of a picture of what the word means as the Longman Dictionary one does. The next line in your vocabulary notebook will be the reading example. And so all you need to do is go to the sentence that the word appears. Here we are. When individuals do not want to admit the truth and then face the consequences, they lie to avoid difficulties. So that's what I wrote here. It's the exact same sentence, you just copy it. You've read the article, so you know what the article is about. This is a meaningful use of the word consequence for you because you understand what the article means, so it's very good to have that in your vocabulary notebook too. Next, we have a dictionary example. That's another thing I love about the Longman Dictionary here, is they give you example sentences. We have this example sentence, this one, and this one. These three are all in gray. So we have many believe that poverty is a direct consequence of overpopulation. Our findings have far-reaching consequences for researchers, and he ate some poisonous mushrooms with fatal consequences. Any of these three are fine to put in your notebook. You just need to pick one. But I would say pick the sentence that is easiest for you to understand and helps you remember the meaning of consequence the best. So for me, I thought this one was pretty clear. He ate some poisonous mushrooms with fatal consequences. If something is fatal, that means it causes you to die. And so for me, that made a lot of sense. And so I put it here. If that sentence didn't make sense to you and another one makes more sense, just put that one. Whichever of those three you like the best is fine. Again, I only picked one. The next line is this language chunks, or sometimes I call it language expressions here. That's kind of a new phrase for probably most people, but let me take a minute to explain. In every language, we never use words in meaningless ways, in random ways. Most of the time, the words that we use are in phrases. So when I say peanut butter and, most native speakers would know I'm going to say jelly next. When I say fish and as a food, most native speakers would say fish and chips. Why do they do that? Because those words don't just appear in language alone most of the time. Most of the time, words appear next to other words. And there are words that always go together or seem to always go together. And so in this dictionary, in the Longman Dictionary, we have that. If you'll notice here, consequence of, we would call that a language expression. We can't say consequence in, we can't say consequence on. In these situations, we would say consequence of. We often also say consequence for. And lastly, we would say with ... consequences, with positive consequences, with negative consequences, with fatal consequences. So it's good to know that the ... here is usually an adjective: positive, negative, fatal, horrible, fantastic, wonderful. Any of those words, any of those adjectives fit really well in there, depending on what you're trying to say. When you're looking for language expressions, you only want to look underneath the dictionary definition that you're using. If there were language expressions here, or if there were language expressions here, you wouldn't put them in there. You wouldn't put them in your vocabulary notebook entry. Why is that? Well, we're just using this definition. If we write down language expressions for different definitions, that's not going to help us. That's not going to help us with our definition and the way we know this word. So we only write down the language expressions for these definitions, or underneath the definition we're using, I should say. So hopefully that's clear. Whenever, I think I have that on the handout here. So on line 5, I say language expressions or language chunks that are used with the word. These are bold gray words in the example sentences, or they are the black bold words as phrases below your chosen definition. And what we're looking at for consequences are these black bold words as phrases below our chosen definition. Here we have black bold, black bold, black bold, and that's what we would put as our language expressions. And so as you can see, consequence of, consequence for, with ... consequences. And maybe, to make it clear for me when I'm reviewing, I can put adjective, so I remember horrible, wonderful, beautiful, happy, exciting. Any adjective you can put there as long as the context is correct. And then last but not least, we have our original sentence. So this is where you would use your new understanding of the word to make a sentence that's meaningful to you, that you would maybe say to a friend, say in a paper, say about the world or the world situation, that has some meaning to you. I have some advice about those. So your own sentence should show me that you know what the vocabulary word means. That's the first thing. If you're very general, if you just have a subject and a verb and a period, I'm not going to know that you know what the word means. I'll just know you're good at grammar. So here, my example for consequence that I put in my notebook entry was his heavy weight was a consequence of his bad eating habits. So if you eat candy, cookies, junk food all the time, you're going to gain weight. You're going to be pretty heavy. And so we would say that a heavy weight, weighing a lot, is a consequence of your eating, consequence of what you put in your body. A sentence that is grammatically correct, but you wouldn't want to say in your notebook, is there are always consequences. This is a really grammatically correct sentence, but I cannot tell whether you understand the meaning of consequences or not. Maybe you think consequences means benefits. Maybe you think consequences means homework or dogs. I don't know. Because there's no context, I cannot tell whether you really understand the meaning of the word or not. I could tell you know how to use it in your grammar, but I can't tell whether or not you actually know the meaning of the word.